Hi everyone, and welcome to 3 Times a Gamer. Now I know this is primarily a gaming channel, but every now and then I'd like to do something a little different. Now, I've been to see Star Wars The Last Jedi, and I love Star Wars, so I thought I'd give my views on it, a bit of a review, and any theories I've got going forward into maybe episode 9. Now, before we start, just to warn everyone, this will have spoilers, so if you haven't seen the film, and you don't want to be spoiled, then please stop this now. You can always come back if you want to another time once you've seen the film. So I'll just give you a second just to run along. Okay, so I'm assuming now everyone here wants to know my thoughts on it and don't mind being spoiled or has seen the film. Okay, so first off, I saw it on the Sunday after release, so the opening weekend. I haven't posted this previously because I wanted to see it again to fully cement my views. So I saw it again yesterday, and I thought I'd come on here and share with everyone how I personally felt about the film. Now, on my first view, I liked the film, but I was left feeling a bit unsure of exactly how I felt with it. I liked it, and I'd probably put it up there. I would have maybe midway in the Star Wars films, above the prequels, but maybe not above anything else. However, leaving the cinema, thinking about some of the things that I wasn't sure about, and then going back also watching the film again, I think it's actually brought it up a bit higher. For me, now I knew what to expect from the film, I liked it a lot more the second time, and I would probably put it as sort of number 4 maybe in my list. I would probably go Empire Strikes Back, A New Hope, and then probably, I don't know, I would say probably Force Awakens and Last Jedi, maybe together, and then Return of the Jedi, and then the prequels below, going with Revenge of the Sith, probably, definitely the top of the prequel ones. But it's really hard for me to say exactly where I place all the Star Wars films, because they all have their own merits, and all have their own drawbacks. But anyway, let's get more into my full feelings of everything in the film. So, first off, let's just get this out there, because I know this film has been divided right down the middle, with a load of people absolutely loving it, saying it's one of the best Star Wars films, and a load of people saying it's complete rubbish and needs to be remade. I was going to get this straight out. If the reason is because you think it's SJWs, it's social justice warrior thing, then it's completely irrelevant, your argument. Anything else I can accept, because everyone has their own views and opinions on films. So if you don't like the film, fair enough. I wasn't sure what to think of it when I first saw it, and there's films I love that everyone else, but many of you rather, will hate. There's films that many of you will love that I will hate. That's the way opinions work. However, if it's because you don't like that there's a person who's black, a woman in charge, and all that kind of stuff, then I'm sorry, that invalidates anything you said if that is the reason you don't like it. First off, all the old Star Wars films, you have Lando Calrissian, you got Leia, Lando's in a position of power, running the Cloud City. Leia, she's a massive part of the Rebel Alliance. But beyond all that, anyway, you're talking about a franchise full of aliens, all sorts of species, and the things you're worried about is somebody in power who's a woman, or someone who's Latin American, and all that kind of stuff is ridiculous, frankly. It's different if they had Luke Skywalker who suddenly had a sex change for no apparent reason. I'd understand, because that wouldn't fit in with the story at all. But you're talking about a universe full of mythical, fantastical things with aliens everywhere, and all we can worry about is a woman being predominantly, part of the film, and people of different races, then yeah, I'm sorry. But anyway, getting away from that, because otherwise I'll just rant about that forever. My biggest problem with the film originally is the overall plot of basically the Resistance running away for 2.5 hours. Essentially, that is what the film is. Watching it back again, it didn't, even though is still that, it didn't seem as much of a problem to me, because you sort of realise it is broke up throughout the film, with obviously the Rey with Luke, and of course you get onto the planet Crate by the end. I do feel that maybe they could have shortened it down and done something else near the end, perhaps, and it might have made it an overall more enjoyable film. But as I say, I think certainly for me, after watching it back again, I knew what the idea of the plot was. I kind of accepted it more, and it made it much more enjoyable. Now let's get into more specifics, and give you my ideas on how I think this could go. Because like many of you out there, I was very unsure about many of the same things, and now I've viewed it in a different way. I've come to see it differently. So let's get the big one, I think, out of the way. Luke Skywalker, how they've dealt with him. Now, for me, thinking about it, in a way it's quite clever how the film's done it, because he talks about how he's a legend in this universe, how everyone sees him as this ultimate Jedi, basically. And I think as the audience, we've done the same thing to Luke. We've put him on this pedestal, romanticised Luke Skywalker in a way that really he isn't. I mean, he didn't finish his training, so he's given training to other, potential Jedi candidates without completing his own. Now, people say he was always full of hope and he would, never give up. That's true. That is true. But firstly, time changes anyone. Well, not everyone, but many people. Time will change. End of the day, yes, this is a film. I know, but people are not allowed to have a nervous breakdown if they've done something they feel is really bad. Essentially, you could look at Luke doing that. But I think one of the things I've seen many people mentioning is how Luke would never entertain the thought of killing Ben Solo. He always saw the good in his father, who was, killing many people, as Darth Vader. However, while I thought that initially, I disagree with that now. If you think about how he reacts in Return of the Jedi, bearing in mind about his power anyway, I do believe that because there's that slight bit of light in Darth Vader while they're fighting, does allow Luke to best him easier than he would have normally. But the main reason he beats Darth Vader, they're in the middle of fighting, Darth Vader and Luke are fighting each other. The main reason he wins in my eyes is because of the threat to Leia. He lets that get to him and he unleashes a little bit of the dark side. For me, Luke isn't just light, he has that darkness in him, but he controls it for the most part. But Luke does go a bit mad and he does cut off Darth Vader's hands. And, in my eyes, he is almost willing to kill him. He has a temporary blindness that almost makes him think, let's take him out. But he comes to his senses and he doesn't do that, and he refuses to. For me, it's the same as what happens in The Last Jedi. He has a very short moment of weakness. He ignites a lightsaber because he sees what Ben Solo potentially is going to do. Potentially going to kill all his students, or the majority of his students, and go on to be this the apprentice of Snoke. So he has that brief moment of weakness, just as he does with Darth Vader, in my eyes. Now, everyone views different things different in Star Wars. I think that's also part of the reason why it's been such a vocal thing with Last Jedi, because I think there's so many different groups of Star Wars fans, and what everyone likes in a Star Wars is different things. But to me, Luke was never that amazing hero. He was in terms of general actions, in terms of he wanted to bring down the Empire and all that. But my eyes is, he didn't want to see the return of the Empire. He didn't want to be responsible for bringing it back. So he had that moment of, let's take out Ben Solo. But he didn't, and that redeemed him. Now, in terms of the end of the film, about him not actually having a full, proper duel with Kylo Ren, about him force projecting himself rather than him going there himself and doing it. Again, I was initially skeptical of that, but thinking about it, what has he actually done by doing this? If he went there in person and fought, especially because he's been out of training for a long time, what if he potentially lost that battle? By him going there, and in fact, backtracking on that, he even sort of mentions that to Rey. He says, "What do you expect me to do? Go there and take on the First Order by myself?" People are being a bit delusional. Not the fans, sorry. The characters in the film are being a bit delusional of what Luke Skywalker could potentially bring to the fight. By him going there, not in actual spirit, but as a projection, people see this fight going on, not being touched by anything. That brings that legend back to life and brings hope back to the galaxy that, wow, there's this person out there who's dodging all this fire, who's dodging lightsaber attacks, not even been touched, not breaking a sweat. To me, that brings more hope to the galaxy than Luke being there himself, an older man, potentially struggling to fight, potentially being hurt, potentially even dying that way. Now, in terms of Luke dying, because obviously by doing that, the way I took it is it took that much energy from him that he couldn't take it and he died. Now, we've got to remember, Obi-Wan basically did the same thing. You've got Yoda died, and they've both come back as Force ghosts. So for me, in Episode 9, Luke is probably going to come back as a Force ghost. And whether he'll be major to the plot, I don't know, but I think he will come back. So the next big thing I see people mentioning is about Snoke dying off so quickly. We didn't really find a lot about him. Again, that's one I agreed with originally, and potentially may still agree with. I think for me it depends on how they deal with Episode 9. I have hope, especially as the current project title for Episode 9 is Black Diamond. Now Snoke has a ring with a piece of black rock in it. For me, that's hope that he is going to play a part in it. Whether that is he has the power over life and death and can sort of regenerate himself, or whether he'll come back as a Force ghost, dark spirit. I kind of hope for the spirit, because maybe we might have a spiritual battle essentially between Luke and Snoke, and that could be the battle that everyone's looking for in Luke Skywalker. I think that could be quite cool. But bearing in mind, in terms of backstory on Snoke, while it will be awesome to find out some stuff about him, bear in mind we didn't really find out anything about the Emperor in the original films, only because Episode 1, 2 and 3 was released after, and I imagine, to be fair, I haven't read all the Extended Universe books, but they would have probably mentioned some stuff in there. But in terms of the original trilogy films, what was in there? We didn't really know anything about the Emperor, other than he was the Emperor of this vast galactic empire, trying to rule it all. So there isn't really that much different in Snoke. But yes, I agree with everyone. I would love to know more about him, and if they don't do anything with him in Episode 9, then he is a bit of a waste. I don't have a problem with him not foreseeing the lightsaber, because Kylo Ren is twisting his own lightsaber as he's doing that. So I think his Snoke's own hubris, believing that he could foresee everything and he's not going to be betrayed, is ultimately his downfall, and why that worked in my eyes. So what else? Let's get into the actual bits that I would never deny at all. Is visuals of the film were fantastic. There's some amazing moments in the film. The battle on Crate with all the red against the white looked absolutely stunning. The light speed bombing run looked fantastic. I just loved that scene when it went through the ship and it was silence for a moment, and then you see all the ships ripped apart. Was absolutely beautiful. So the visuals in the film were beautifully done. Some of the best we've ever seen on Star Wars. I thought the acting was great. All the actors in it did a fantastic job. Daisy Ridley did well. Adam Driver was fantastic. For me, I think the standouts were probably Oscar Isaac, who plays Poe Dameron. I think he was one of my favourite characters in it. And I very much liked Leia's role in this as well. Let's get back to some more of the contentious points. Vice Admiral Holdall not mentioning what was going on to the crew. Now, first off, they were looking for a resistant base that was actually going to have enough signal, I think it was, to send a distress beacon. So I don't think initially she knew herself what the plan was. I think they were just hoping they were going to come across something, which they do. Now, near the end of the plot of them running away, they obviously did know what they were doing because they started to refuel the escape ships. Now, there's two reasons I don't think she told Poe Dameron. One is he was too unpredictable. He'd been taking out fighters trying to fight the First Order because he didn't want to see their ships lost and everything like that. So I don't think she felt that he would have been able to take the running away as an option. Especially as in the last act she saw before Leia was put into a coma, was him disobeying her and not doing what she wanted to do, which was to retreat. But also, I think he does kick off quite quickly, so she probably doesn't really have a chance to explain the details, because by that point he kicks off and the whole mutiny aspect starts. Yes, it is a little bit flawed in parts. It's not completely airtight. That's my opinion on the reasons why. Yeah, there is a bit contentious whether there were moments that she should have said and could have said what was going to happen. But it's Star Wars at the end of the day. Most of the films, if not all the films, have contentious plot points, especially when you factor in the prequels don't match up very well to the original series, with things like Obi-Wan Kenobi not knowing R2-D2, even though he's with him all of the prequel films. For example, that's just one example. So yes, it's not perfect. Is it enough to ruin the film? By no means. So the Lightspeed bombing run was an amazing part for me. People have mentioned, out of all over the course of this war, has no one else thought of this. But firstly, we don't know. No one has ever thought of it. But I think it's something that wouldn't work all the time. The reason it worked here is because she started doing her Lightspeed calculations. They failed to act fast enough because they thought it was a diversion. They would concentrate on everything else. If they'd have acted straight away, they would have blew her up. If they was, the stew was starting to turn around, to getting closer, they could have fired all of their arsenal on her, and it probably would have blew up before she had the chance to actually initiate her Lightspeed run. So I don't think it's something that would always work. As soon as people started to spin around and get closer, they would start firing. That's my feelings on it. Again, it's not perfect, but then, at the end of the day, it is talking about space battles that we don't currently have in real life, so how are we to know really how all this stuff would act? How it would react? Now, one of my gripes is how the bombing run works near the beginning, because you've got bay doors open and there's no vacuum of space pulling them out. I'm just going to assume there's atmospheric shields around it that's stopping that, and I'm also going to look at it as the bombs may have some kind of magnetic pull to them, or maybe little thrusters that throw them down, or something like that. That's how I'm going to look at it. Probably not, and it is probably just an oversight. But again, it's Star Wars. You've got sound in space. You've got explosions going off in space that are bigger than they would be. So you just got to overlook that in my eyes. And that brings me anyway now to the bit that I'm unsure about in the film, is Canto Bight. I think it belongs in the Star Wars universe. For me, it bridges the gap between how the prequels look to how the originals and the new ones look, because obviously the originals and new ones are all old and decaying. Well, not decaying, but rusty and, put together for function rather than looks. But in Canto Bight, you see all the more beautiful ships that are more like all the prequel stuff, because they've got the money to do this. So I did like that aspect, and I think parts of that were good. Did it need to be in the film? Could I have done it in a better, shorter way? Yes, definitely. I think that's something that could have been cut and placed with something shorter, and would probably make more sense in this specific story. Saying that though, we're sitting here complaining how the film was basically a long, 2.5 hour running away sequence. This did break that up. So I suppose really we should be thankful for that in some ways. So yeah, I mean, I don't think it's absolutely terrible, but it could have been handled better, that scene. So I agree with most people on that. So Captain Phasma, I think, was great in it, but again underused. But to me, she's the Boba Fett of this series. Boba Fett was great, he looked awesome, but didn't really do a lot during the original films. So for me, she's the same. I hope she comes back in number 9. I think she could still survive that, especially because her arm is like blaster proof and all that. So she could survive it. So I hope she does come back. But yeah, I think for me that's probably the most of what I want to say about the film. Yeah, very enjoyable film. For me, it needs a couple of watches and to really think about what happened in the film to fully appreciate it. I think it's going to be a film that is remembered more fondly as time goes on, and depending how they deal with episode 9. Now, if episode 9 doesn't address much of what happened in this, then it would be harder to defend the film. So I think for me, we have to wait till episode 9 comes out, and then we'll have a full understanding of really where the whole trilogy places itself in overall Star Wars lore, and how well they work as a whole 9 film set. But yeah, I just wanted to get that off my chest, get my feelings out there to you. How I felt many of the complaints are actually addressed without people necessarily realising, or there's just different takes on how that is. Maybe my takes on it is the same as Rian Johnson, so maybe that's why I'm seeing it like his eyes. Maybe he is seeing things the same way I do. That could well be why, where other people are seeing it differently. But anyway, obviously, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, so I'm not saying anyone's wrong. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying you're wrong. Everyone is equally right and wrong as one another. But no, thank you very much for watching. Leave your comments down below if you disagree with me or agree with me in any way. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you have a lovely Christmas, and I'll see you soon with another video. Bye bye.